This is Paul Onied, Master Athletic Performance Head Coach and co-owner of Coach's Corner University. Today we're going to talk about some principles that we're going to use with assistance work. If you're a powerlifter, the common thing I see with the most successful lifters is take your assistance work seriously. Train your assistance work with its desired intent. So I have Seth here with me today. We're going to be doing some dumbbell rows. The dumbbell row is a tremendous exercise for either building the upper back or the lats. And I make the delineation because it's important. If we have a weakness in our lats, we're going to want to row a little bit differently than if we have a weakness in our upper back. The way we're going to be doing it today, we're going to standardize the range of motion, which is important across the board. When we standardize the range of motion, we know that if we're getting stronger and we're able to move more weight, that it's not because our technique got sloppy, it's because we actually got stronger. So, come over here. So I'm going to have Seth use a split stance. So he's going to have his off leg, so the leg opposite the arm that's loaded in front. The other leg is going to be back. This is called a contralateral stance. So I'm going to try and get Seth to flatten out his back as much as he can, bend that front leg so he can come down and grab the dumbbell. We're going to row today with a technique that's going to emphasize his lower lat. So lower to the lat, this muscle right here. That's important because the lat inserts onto the hip, so it can actually help with torso stability and hip stability in the squat. We're going to standardize the range of motion by having him start and finish every rep on the ground with a dead stop. I'm going to cue him to pull his shoulder to his hip to initiate the movement and then drive that elbow back to his hip. Once he starts to rotate from his trunk, we're going to stop the rep. There shouldn't be a lawnmower finishing position. We want to keep the tension in that muscle the whole time. We're trying to train our muscles, not the movement. Okay. So flatten out that back, dead stop, and go. Pull to the hip, squeeze, and come down. Control that eccentric a little bit more. Squeeze, control, dead stop, come up, squeeze, good. Control, dead stop, squeeze. So he's finishing flat here. He's not rotating this shoulder high, finishing with the hip and the elbow in line, and he's initiating by pulling his shoulder down towards his hip. Good. Let's match reps on the other side, and then we'll work out. So same setup. Some setup cues here. Depending on your level of mobility, you can use a bench. You can raise the bench, lower the bench to allow you to get the best back position possible, but you want your torso more or less parallel to the floor. The other thing is you can manipulate how wide your feet are. You could angle that back foot out if you lack hip mobility. All of these things are going to allow you to get into better position. The key here is to train the lats. We're not going to get so far into the weeds with regards to setup. As long as you feel it in the lats where you want to feel it, you're in a good spot. All right, so dead stop, lower yourself a little bit, flat back, shoulder to hip. Good. Squeeze and control the eccentric. Squeeze, control, dead stop. Squeeze. I don't want to hear it when it touches the ground. Full control. Touch the ground. Good. There you go. Full control, dead stop. Initiate with that shoulder to your hip, not rotation. 2 more. 7. Shoulder to hip. 8. Good. There you go. How hard was that? Scale 1 to 10.
Probably 6.
6? All right, let's go up to 80s. The goal here is going to be to fail within a given rep range. On an exercise like this, usually I would do 1 heavy set and 1 lighter set. When we're training a muscle, we want to make sure to train to failure. Hypertrophy or muscle building occurs the closer to failure that we get. So if we're training as close to failure as we can, we need less total sets to accumulate the amount of work needed to grow. So for Seth, the goal is we're going to go 2 hard sets, the first one being a little bit heavier, then we're going to drop down, go a little bit lighter. Once he starts to cheat the movement too much, we're going to cut him off because we're trying to keep that standard of execution intact. So really big squeeze, dead stop on the ground, control every inch of that range of motion. There you go. Squeeze. Dead stop. 2. I want it to touch. 3. Good. 4. Find that groove, stay in it. 5. Dead stop. Don't just touch and go. Stop. Go. 7. Shoulder to hip. 8. All the way to the ground. Shoulder to hip, shoulder to hip. Pull. 9. One more. You got one more. Stay in the groove. Shoulder to hip. Good. Done. So we stopped him as soon as he would have started to cheat the movement. We're going to stop. We don't need those additional reps right now. We're saving our energy for the main lift. Right now we're trying to get muscular failure, and then we're done. It's 11. Let's try to get a rep match here. Full control of that entire range of motion. 1, control, light touch, pause, go. 2, good, Seth. Pause, up. 3, shoulder to hip. I want you to feel that lat all the way into your hip. So, good. Squeeze. 8. 3 more, come on, you got it. Squeeze. 10, light touch, last rep, squeeze, control. Okay. Don't waste your eccentrics. Lesson of the day, don't waste your eccentrics, children. Let's go down to 65. See that? It's hard work. Take your time, there's no rush. No rush. Have a seat. Have a seat. You're a power lifter. This is what you do. You sit down between sets.
Usually take a nap.
Take a nap?
Not really.
Usually using too much caffeine to take a nap. Whenever you're ready. So when we're training, whether it's compound lifts or assistance work, we want to be able to take as much rest as we need to put maximal effort into every set. Okay? If you shorten your rest period too much, what you're going to do is you're going to limit your output. On something like an escalating density deadlift that we did earlier, the goal is fatigue, right? We're not moving maximal weights. We're not working towards failure. Everything's going to be sub-max. When you're working towards maximal output during that set, you want to make sure that you're prepared before every set. Because if you're too fatigued to put maximal effort into the set, you're not going to get as good of a stimulus and you're not going to grow. Okay?
I feel more on the left side than I do the right.
So you've actually got an imbalance left to right. Your left side is much weaker than your right.
So the right side's the one I tore. It's the one we focused on when we did the rehab.
It could be why. It could be why. There is a stability component left to right. You also are a driver, correct? Yeah. So you probably drive with your left hand much more than your right hand. So that position over time is just going to put you at a disadvantaged leverage position than your lat. So this lat's going to be lengthened, this lat's going to be shortened. So a shorter muscle is going to be able to move the weight a little bit better than a lengthened muscle. We all have these innate imbalances. That's why unilateral work is so valuable. It allows you to identify and slowly address over time. A more symmetrical physique is likely going to be one that lends itself to less injury, in my opinion.
Proof.
I'm not proof. I blew myself apart. There you go. Set those feet, dead stop, squeeze up, control, dead stop, good. Keep in that groove. That's your groove right there. 3, 4, 5. Feel that stretch, 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 and go. 6. Squeeze. Up, 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 up. Good, done. So what we saw there is even though we dropped the load about 20%, his performance dropped about 3 reps. So in the future, what we would know is, if he was keeping a logbook, he would know that he needs a bigger weight drop off to be able to hit the prescribed rep range. For us, we wanted a set of 8 to 12 and then maybe a more higher rep set afterwards, but even with that weight drop, he still went to the lower end of the rep range. So we'll get a rep match, 8 reps. I want you to keep that same groove. It was really good. Squeeze. There it is. Feel that stretch. Dead stop. Squeeze. Perfect. 3. Throw that shoulder to the hip. 4. Come on. 3. Good. 2. Dead stop. Squeeze up. You got one more in you. Come on. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Shoulder to hip. Good. There you go. Way to stay in the groove. That's what we want. All right, that's done. 2 sets. And now, you might think 2 sets is very low, but in the grand scheme of a training plan, if both of those sets were done as close to failure as possible, we accumulated the same amount of effective reps as if we did 5 sets of, say, 10 reps, but not as close to failure. So we got more out of less work, which is ultimately what we're going to try and do to maximize our recovery. And in the grand scheme of our training, our recovery is more important, is better left for those main lifts, the areas that we're trying to build. So we want to get the most out of the least on our assistance work. That's why this higher relative intensity technique is going to work a lot better.
Hold back to powerlifting for a second.
Well, you said you're not used to doing higher rep, eh?
No, I've been 5, 6 at most. And then I think yesterday was the first day I pushed past that. I just did some calisthenics. Dips. I did 15 minutes cardio. 4 sets of dips. First 2 were 10 to warm up, and then 2 at failure. 9, then 6. And I just did body weight squats on top of the yoga ball to try to get them ready for the night and not be super tight when I'm driving.
Yeah, there's a lot of different roads to roam with regards to that kind of stuff, but the big thing for me is like your training should also serve as an element of mobility work, right? So if you're putting yourself loaded into these positions of stretch, you don't necessarily need to stretch because you'll keep those ranges. What most people feel like is tightness is actually just a lack of recovery in a lot of cases. So doing these, 5 sets of 10, 4 sets of 12 kind of thing, you're accumulating a lot of fatigue through those 40 reps, say in a 4 sets of 10. But if only 4 of those reps were close enough to failure to do anything, you accumulated 36 reps of fatiguing work. Whereas if we just did 2 sets of 10 to 12, and we actually got 6 reps total of effective work because we trained to failure, we did more effective work in 2 sets than you would have done in 4 sets, and we're less tired because of it, less accumulated fatigue. You're better recovered for training the coming days.
Don't do night shift, kids. Don't happen.
Shift work is tough.
Yeah.